Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Nerds of the Roundtable with myself, Eric Johnson, and my hostess with the mostest,
Sean DeVault.
Welcome.
Oh, that's a good intro.
Oh, thank you,
Man,
thank you, thank you.
that. Just like that.
Oh,
You did
thanks,
good.
you, thanks, Sean. So, welcome as we dig deep into Nerds Podcast.
Oh, there it is. That's been a while. Feeling it. Feeling it.
Oh yeah. Wow. I have not heard that in a long time.
It's a thing of beauty.
It really is.
I need to set that as my alarm in the morning to wake up so I can get ready to go.
That would just really just
ready to
fill
go.
you with vigor.
I'm just ready.
I like it. So,
So ready.
here we go. What are we doing today?
We're ready.
What are we talking about today? Do we even know?
What are we talking about? Nothing.
RTX.
That is true.
So-
That is big and important and crazy and next gen. It's so next gen, Eric. Next gen.
You know what else is next gen?
Ray tracing. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have heard or not, but there is going to be a new graphics card from Nvidia. Mm-hmm. Did you hear?
I heard.
Oh, well,
gonna be a
that's
couple
good.
of 'em.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I was glad I heard, since considering we're talking about it. No, I didn't, Eric. Tell me more.
Well, right off the bat, before we even talk about it at all, AMD fanboy,
That is me.
are you excited?
Tracing for life?
Are you excited where stuff is going to go or no? Just yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right.
I don't know. But it's interesting because we're just like now NVIDIA gets another performance leap even more.
And we'll dig into whether
We'll
or not
see.
that is true or not.
Well, yeah.
So when did it happen? When did they announce this? It was a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah, it was the 22nd
Of
August.
because it's now September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good math there.
Sorry. It
I had look down at the calendar. I'm all like, what? What month is it? It is September. Yeah, I know. So it was on the 22nd. So yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So there's only been an event. There has not been any embargo lift. No units have shipped, only pre-order so far.
Yeah, I mean reviewers have cards. They're testing them.
Yes. But nothing has been released yet. Because nothing can release until the 20th of
Oh,
September, I believe, is
When
the
they're-
embargo.
that's when people can start talking, showing test results.
Yeah. I believe that's when the embargo is. So
Interesting.
basically what they announced was 3 levels of cards. The RTX 2070, the 2080, and then the odd one, the 2080 Ti.
Yeah, at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah, usually they announce the Ti 6 months or so after, and it's usually a clocked down version of the Titan
That is
kind
true.
of card, to kind of be in between the Titan and the 1080,
Yep.
or the 80 series of cards. So it was kind of odd, but it's also an
announce it
odd
immediately.
product.
Yeah, but I mean, they have it performance-wise. I mean, they're really shooting to try to do some very impressive things that makes them need this ultra high-end model. So that's the thing is the price point for the Ti is $1,200.
Yeah. It's up there.
So you can't really release a regular 2080 at $1,200. Like your regular pricing is like $800, $700. I mean, the regular 2080 is $800.
Yeah. Which is on, well, that's the Founders
Edition,
Yeah.
which is the only one you can buy.
Yeah. Partner cards are starting to come into the wild.
Yeah.
I've seen Asus and Gigabyte cards, I believe, so far.
Yeah. So supposedly it can go down. So the 2080 800, the 2080 Ti 1000. But that's just the thing, is it'd be a big jump from the 1080, just the regular GTX 1080, to $1,000 for a 2080.
Yeah.
So they kind of needed to do the 2080 Ti so that it wasn't just this ridiculous, like, oh, hey, here's all our new technology. You'll pay out your ass for it.
Yeah.
And then release a 2080 Ti later that's even more expensive.
And that becomes the kind of question is that we still don't have answered yet, is how these stack up compared to last year's cards.
No, it's the
Against,
1080s.
you know, how, and this is the GPU architecture is called Turing. The last generation was Pascal. So usually what happens is they launch a new series of cards. Usually, if I remember right, the 1070 will, or the 70 series of the new architecture will outperform the 80 Ti series.
Oh, the Ti. That's,
At least the 80.
yeah, the 1080 was stronger than the 980 Ti.
Yeah. Yep.
Not the 1070. I don't think 1070 is as strong as the 980 Ti.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Research.
They made a really good jump on this series.
Yeah, they did. They did.
But the 1070, or the 2070, probably will not be as fast as a 1080 Ti.
Oh, no. Oh,
'Cause
no.
that 1080 Ti is still an extremely good card.
It is.
It's a very expensive card.
And that's really been the real mystery, is how these cards stack up. Usually we kind of know by now,
Yeah, it'll be nowhere close.
but we don't know. And we also have new metrics that we have to go by because of the new technology that they're using within these cards, because it isn't just a standard DirectX 12, subset that they're, how they do polygons and that type of, I forget what the technology is, how they render items now in shading.
Yeah, well, their big
Rasterizing.
thing. Yeah, well, the big thing is their lighting pipeline, which does use a Microsoft API at its core. So it is something that could be kind of similar if AMD chooses to do it later, since it's a Microsoft core. But they're doing a version of real-time ray tracing to do all their lighting models and reflections and shadows.
So
With specific hardware accelerated just to do that.
yeah.
That's not even available on any other card or architecture, period. So
Yep.
it doesn't exist on other stuff.
Yeah.
And it can't be compared to anything because nothing exists for it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's hard to compare immediately. Because they did the whole, like, normally you go teraflops. Like, oh, this card has this many teraflops of processing power. But instead, they're like, oh, we have these ray tracing cores, and then we also have these AI cores. And with the ray tracing cores and the AI cores, we actually have all these other operations that don't count towards the teraflops, because you can't directly compare them to teraflops. So they're RTX flops, which is just marketing, essentially, since it can't directly compare it to anything. It's just trying to show you a gigantic number to say it's way stronger than something, when at ray tracing it is, but it's not really a direct performance metric that you can go one against the other so far.
Because there's 3 different cores within these systems, and I forget what the differences are. Let's see here.
Yeah, so it is like a...
So you have the ray tracing core,
Yeah.
the tensor core, and the Turing sub.
Yeah, so the tensor core is the AI core.
Yep.
So really what was interesting is that tensor core, that AI core, is specifically for video image scaling, from what they showed demo-wise. So they showed a lot of AI on feeding low-resolution images into an AI, learning computer and putting out high-resolution images.
Yeah.
And it's really, I guess, exists to fake resolution or anti-aliasing, because the performance hit is so gigantic for ray tracing that all the resolutions have dropped dramatically. So it looks like they're kind of planning to do a whole bunch of AI upscaling because they can't render high enough resolutions.
At least fast enough.
Yeah, for a lot of things to work.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that's like not directly comparable to anything. That doesn't happen in anything. There's no image scaling fake resolution on cards at the time. There's dynamic resolution scaling, that's actual resolution that scales up and down, but there's not like a image hardware accelerated scaling processor to upscale lower rendered resolutions.
Yeah. And so then it's going to be really interesting to see it out in the wild, see what it does in benchmarks, because not only are we going to have to look at performance within ray tracing within ray tracing workloads and see how that works out and see what performances you get, what benefits you get, what controls you have within the game itself
Yes.
to get the performance that you need to get the 60 FPS to do some of these games that you need those kinds of frame rates. There are some artistic ones that you can run at lower frame rates and it doesn't really hurt anything. But if you're doing any type of competitive or anything, then you kind of need the higher.
Yeah, so I guess without knowing the numbers for directly comparing straight games, they actually did announce 11 titles that are going to be supported off the bat, which I believe I still have the list up here. Yes. So the 11 games that are supported so far with this rendering model are Assetto Corsa Competizione, no idea what that is. Atomic Heart, no idea. Battlefield 5, which will be huge. They demoed Battlefield 5. Control, no idea. Unlisted, no idea. Justice, no idea. JX3, no idea. Mech Warrior 5, Mercenaries. That one I think they demoed as well. Metro Exodus, which had a really good demo too. Then Project DH, and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So I recognize 4 games off of that, even though Mech Warrior 5 I don't really pay any attention to. So it's really like 3 titles so far that even supports their rendering just to see it. But apparently they only had a couple weeks to work on the integration before the press conference to show demo material and show everything running. So what they did get up running was really impressive.
It was.
Especially Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 was crazy.
Yeah. It looks fantastic. And that's where it's going to be really interesting to see where the technology goes. And that's where, as we were talking about earlier, it's going to be a double-edged sword because you can't create titles that have this technology or the feature set built into it without the hardware existing.
Yeah, this doesn't work on anything besides one of these 3 GPUs. And that's it.
It's going to be so hard to sell these GPUs if that's your limited game subset, especially as a feature. And so it's going to take a couple iterations. It's going to take some generation time and some titles to be churned out. And you can't, in my opinion, you can't take an existing title and update it to work with ray tracing really well. You're going to need to work from the ground up around ray tracing to really make something that's compelling.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but the tough thing too is it's they call it like a holy grail of rendering, like for lighting. And when they do comparisons, it's very obvious that it is amazing. But it's coming a lot earlier. I mean, even they said, oh, this is like, 5 years earlier than we expected to have this, just with our architecture advancements, what we'll be able to push out. We have this now instead of 5 years from now. But saying that, it's extremely compute heavy, ridiculous. So every demo they showed was on the 2080 Ti, their top $1,000 card that, not a lot of people can afford. And most games, every game was running 1080p. And most are about 30 frames. So like Battlefield 5 was 1080p 30. Metro was 1080p at about 40. Everything went up and down between there. And Tomb Raider was running in the 20s. It doesn't really even hold 30. So it's interesting because like on the consoles and everything, You know, you have like the Xbox One X, like true 4K gaming, HDR. You know, people have the HDR TVs and 4K, 4K, 4K. And even Nvidia has like their big screen monitor that's insanely expensive. It's like a 43-inch panel that's 4K with HDR. It's 144 hertz. It has like at least 1,000 nits of brightness. And they're pushing like all these high-end monitors and G-Sync and like 144 frame 4K monitors. And then they're like, oh, here's our new architecture. It does these incredible things at 1080p at like 25 to 35, maybe 40 frames. I mean, when everyone gets more familiar with it and optimizes, maybe you'll get 1080p 60, but the idea of doing like 4K RTX with ray tracing is like insane on this generation, and that's on the 2080 Ti. That's $1,000 card. They have the 2070 at $600. You know,
still a lot.
Where's that gonna fall performance wise with ray tracing enabled? Because your $1,000 card's getting 30 frames max at 1080p. Like, are you gonna go to 720p for the sake of having this ray tracing? And even though, I mean, that 2070 at 4K without the ray tracing can probably do the games at 60 frames. So it's like, do I want the ray tracing to take a huge reduction in resolution, or do I want to just allow it to have the regular shadows and get like 4K 100 frames?
And that's going to be the question, is how it's really going to perform once the drivers have matured, they have a final release, they have the games with patches that are going to be the most optimized for what it's going to work with. And that's going to be the problem, is you have to get the game optimized as well for ray tracing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not one of those people that's smart enough to know, but I know it takes something a lot more work than just saying, okay, here's a patch, we enabled it.
Yeah.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah, and the developer has to spend the time, investment, getting that running for what could be a small user base. You know, we'll see how it sells. Apparently, they have a crap load of cards manufactured. They're expecting to do really well. Mm-hmm. It's just very expensive still for a graphics card, just overall. What I'm curious about is what AMD will do with their line once these are out. Because, I mean, the 2070 will probably be much faster than the Vega 64.
So, speculation. Speculation time.
Oh, what?
I speculate that AMD is going to take the side. They're going to take the side road, and they're going to say, okay, here's some new cards. These perform better at everyday tasks than these 1080 Ti's. Yeah, we don't have ray tracing, but we're faster.
Or cheaper.
Faster, cheaper, power efficient. AMD's not known for power efficiency, but
no, not at all. So what I'm hoping for is that Vega 64 and 56 take price drops,
which they have somewhat.
It's more they're getting back to their regular prices.
So where they should be.
Yeah, what they're announced at and what they're supposed to be selling at. Or potentially the RX 580, having that have a price reduction, and then pushing that more towards doing, Crossfire on those, drop that to $200. That is extremely compelling. Or they'll go all in and they'll do the same thing that they've always done, like the, what is it, like the 3990 X2, like the last, did Fury, I think Fury X also had a dual, but do the single card, dual GPU, single bus, single PCB, dual GPU monster, where they could do 32 gigs of high bandwidth memory, 2 RAM, and they can do crazy high clocks, take a crap load of power. But they've said they're going to have a 7 nanometer card released this year. It doesn't mean it's for gamers.
I thought it got delayed.
They could release it for, the pro cards. It could be an instant card. Doesn't mean we're going to get it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's potentially something they can do. Though the current word on the street, though, is that AMD really isn't pushing their desktop graphic cards, and we probably won't see something this year. Probably won't see something next year even. Will probably be 2020 before they release a high-end card again, because their main focus for Navi, their new architecture, is actually doing custom solutions for PS5 and Xbox One 2.
Yeah.
Because they do the chips for the consoles. Consoles sell way more than PC graphics cards, especially an aftermarket card at these price points. More people bought a PS4 than bought, a 1080 Ti, obviously. So AMD maybe just pushing their focus, getting on continue their console pushes, which are very popular. Maybe we'll see a Vega 64 times 2 on one board. Maybe we'll just see a refresh with higher clocks on the 7 nanometer with more memory. We'll see what they do. But Navi's their whole new architecture, their new. It's their finally, because they've been on their current architecture technically for their shader cores for like 5 or 6 years now, maybe longer.
Yeah.
They've made some iterations, but it's still the same base architecture. So Navi should be a response, should get performance up, but hopefully that's a lie. Don't mind that. I was just bringing up some articles. Where's that even posted at?
Tech Power Up.
Tech Power Up.
Which is, they're okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll see what we get from them. It won't be a Navi for sure.
So what they're saying is, what I have looked up quickly is 7 nanometer GPUs are going to be late 2018, and then 7 nanometer Zen 2 CPUs for early 2019.
Interesting.
They may have moved up the GPUs so they line up with the new Zen 2s. So no, we won't get into AMD's new stuff, not unless we want to. Quickly.
And no, I mean they launched new processors, correct? Threadripper 2s.
Yeah. So they launched Threadripper 2s and a iteration of their other Ryzen processors. Made some changes.
Like 2950X just came out, right?
Yeah.
The new one. They were fire selling the old one.
Oh, yeah.
Super cheap. I'm like, oh my God. It was awesome. I would have bought it if I had the money.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good chips.
Well, the new Threadrippers work in existing motherboards. Was that
X399?
No, what's the socket? TM.
No, I have no idea.
TM4 or something like that.
It's like this big.
Yeah.
It's that socket.
Yeah. Bigger's better. So they released, what was it, a 16 core? No, 30. Hold on. God, it's been so long.
The Threadrippers are the one that go up to 32 cores. I think it's a 24 core for the Ryzen, maybe a 16 core, 32 thread.
I'm thinking Threadripper.
Yeah. Well, interesting thing too is the new Intel chip is also releasing, but their mainstream processor. That's 8 cores on the mainstream, and the i9's 8 cores, 16 threads.
Yeah, 32 cores, 64 threads, with a 3.0 base and a 4.2 boost.
Yeah, that's Threadripper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one cares about the other.
Yeah. So the Ryzen is 8 core, 16 threads, is what that says.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's what us mortals can afford.
I don't know. Well, that's the thing is, by the time you're spending money on like a 8700K or something like that, or whatever, the i7.
Yeah, but in those mainstream,
i7s
the mainstream i7 is $350. It's not $1,800. Yeah, the i9
8700K.
Yeah, the i9 mainstream. Yeah. The i9 mainstream, the 9770K, which is going to be the new one, I believe. That one's going to be $450, which is the highest the mainstream processor's ever been. But that's 8 cores, 16 threads, and apparently someone got it to clock at 5.2 gigahertz.
5.3
5.3
on air? No.
on air across all cores. So apparently that thing is a monster.
It's going to last a year.
I know, right? Off 95 watt TDP, which is ridiculous.
That is. Well,
but that thing is supposedly a monster.
the Ryzen 2700X is 105 TDP.
Yeah, Ryzen's much more conservative.
Yeah. So Threadripper comes in 12, 16, 24, and 32 cores. And, of course, hyper-threading on top of that. And they are up to 250 watts TDP.
For $1,800.
Yeah. But I have definitely seen, do not buy the 2990 WX. But the 2920X, which is a 12 core, 24 thread, is pretty enticing at $650.
Yeah, my processor was 640.
60 lanes of PCIe.
Oh, this thing would be ready. 44, I think. Yeah, 44.
Yeah.
Think about that. What the newer, 9770K, being 8 cores, 16 threads on the mainstream platform. I'm like, man, the computer there, it's aging. I'm on 6 cores, 12 threads.
Well,
I'm on X99 2 though, so I'm on an enthusiast platform, so I get a shitload of SATA ports and PCIe lanes and everything that still like the Z930 doesn't quite have. I mean, it has 3.1 native and Thunderbolt native and some better hardware accelerations, but generally the platform, since it's not the enthusiast platform, it's the mainstream platform, isn't quite as feature rich as you get on the enthusiast level stuff, as far as PCIe lanes and controllers and number of SATA ports, which is all I need for my massive hard drives. But yeah, maybe coming around to an upgrade.
Well, that's the thing
we'll
is,
see.
by the time you had enough SATA ports, you're having to run multiplexers and stuff like that to get the quantity that you need for your Plex server. And so at that point, you might as well go with something that has more lanes, so you can add cards and items like that and SSDs and not be worried about bottlenecks and slowdowns, and you can put in dual GPUs and not having to worry about
So I've had
those types of things.
So once RTX 2080, 2070, the Ti launch, I'm going to keep an eye on the Vega pricing, see where it goes. Because that's definitely still, I want to keep FreeSync. So if
I agree.
If it drops to 400, there's no way to not buy it.
No, I agree. So I think all in all, my opinion, I'm gonna love to hear yours, is with RTX cards, don't buy it, don't pre-order, wait until reviews come out and see how it does with normal everyday 1080p 4K gaming. See what frame rates you get, see how it compares to 1080 Ti's, because if it is marginally better, buy a 1080, a 1070, 1070 Ti, buy one of those for cheaper to get you through 2 more years until the next card comes out. Once the iteration comes out, once they've refined it, there's going to be a big boost in performance, and you're not going to regret it.
Yeah, no, 100%. You wouldn't blind buy this in any means.
Yeah.
Especially now that 4K gaming and HDR, like everyone's getting HDR TVs, everyone's getting 4K monitors. The ray tracing looks amazing. There's some very cool things going on, but the insane performance hit for it, it's gonna really have to see what is still capable to happen while it's running. I mean, because they haven't even mentioned anything about HDR running while all the ray tracing is working.
No.
I don't even know if displays even do 1080p HDR. Like, I'm not even sure.
I'm sure.
I guess they do. No, they have to. Yeah, they would. But it's still. I would wait to see where the numbers are. I mean, if you look at just say The 2080 Ti, just spec for spec against the 1080 Ti, you're looking at 4,352 CUDA cores against 3,584. So just with the CUDA cores, which should be basically the same architecture, they have a crap load more cores. The shading performance should go up, so it should perform a good chunk better. I think
it's clocked. It's clocked a lot higher, isn't it?
And we're clocked at 1635 against
Up there. 15.
1582. No, pretty much the same. The 2080 is clocked faster.
That's plus 100.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I'm really interested. So my other side of the argument is going to be really interesting because AMD had this thing this year where they designed their reference card better. Basically, it was the best that it could be designed. The choke and multiplexer layouts and phase controllers were all laid out as well as they could be, that there was real no performance gain from
I got a third party
add-on, from AIBs. And so that was a difficult thing to kind of swallow. Is like, oh, I can't really overclock this. And AMD does this weird thing where they actually perform better if you undervolt sometimes. It's this whole thing. You can dig into it. Go to...
seems wrong. It seems wrong. I don't know if I could do that. Feed something less power? More power.
Let's see here. And that's what I'm really wondering about this one is what is it going to... How's it going to perform?
Where's the overclocking headroom? What are the third-party cooling?
What are AIBs going to really be able to do compared to what they're doing? If you want to dig deep into stuff, check out Gamers Nexus. They really dig way too deep into everything.
Ooh, I will check them out.
They have a guy that takes the individual boards, tears down, will analyze each individual chip and what power it can handle and what the clock frequency and how the layout is and why it's bad or why it's good, if it's actually beneficial or not. Yeah. And so it's super interesting to sit through. And I'll show you one after. But they're pretty awesome. They dig deep. They're like us. They dig deep. But when they test something, they test everything.
Yeah.
These guys are from North Carolina too. But definitely check those guys out. They're, if you want to dig deep into this stuff.
Okay.
So, that's what I'm interested to see what third party does.
Yeah, so from both of us, don't buy the launch card. No, don't pre-order the launch card. There will be a performance benefit, I'm sure, in standard gaming in some way, but it's not. Well, you have to see how much and then the money you're spending. Because if you already have, a 1080 Ti, do you really want to drop $1,000 to get the ray tracing and get 1080p 30 versus what you have now?
Especially when there's only really one game that I would play.
Yeah, Battlefield 5.
Yeah.
And Shadow of Tomb Raider, I think looks good, but their demo was just so.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I think, was included for two reasons. One, it probably has one of the better looking graphics other than Battlefield.
Yeah.
But it also has one of the best built-in benchmarks. That most of any of the publications are more than likely going to use.
That makes sense.
That's my kind of theory of why they included Tomb Raider. And I see included in everything. Look at any benchmark, any publication has done, and I guarantee you Shadow of Tomb Raider is in there.
Interesting.
Check it.
Yeah, actually, what I'd be interested to see, too, is the RTX 1080p Metro Exodus against the 4K HDR Xbox One X. Side by side.
Yes. So
just to see directly the difference on that trade-off of $500 console versus $1,200 graphics card with all this ray tracing, but at 1080p at a low frame rate versus 4K HDR craziness.
yeah,
I'd love to see that side by side.
I would too. What I'm curious to see is whether or not they're going, these AI cores are going to be beneficial when rendering, when in like Adobe Premiere. If it's going to add any type of benefit to doing that type of like interpretive upscaling.
Well, I just want to see too with that upscaling on, it's going to be interesting from a reviewer standpoint on when they do and really enable it for just upscaling where they're not rendering real resolution anymore because the ray tracing is so taxing. So like maybe it'll come out and they'll have like,
but can you tell
a fake, 4K mode that'll up-res everything and they'll render at lower resolutions. And, you will start seeing all these upscaled architectures to be able to push these things out. Which maybe you'll tell, maybe you won't. I mean, right now there's checkerboard rendering on consoles and people can tell for that as a rendering technique. So it'll just be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, even for them knowing, we have it, it's cool, but we can't get high resolutions out of it. So they even architected in a way to fake resolution and to upscale it.
And
so
they're already,
I think they just generally have that in mind.
they already do that in VR where you have your center of focus is rendered at a higher resolution than the
And
peripheral.
everything peripheral vision.
And that's a way to push more bandwidth, or at least seemingly. So that type of stuff it's going to be part of, what just life, software trickery to make us think that we're getting more money for our value.
Yeah.
Because the hardware itself cannot physically progress fast enough to keep up with expectations. So I believe TLDR is wait.
Yep.
Wait for reviews at end of the month
Yep.
and see what happens.
Yeah. They say rumors are they manufactured a crap load of them. So you don't expect it to not be available. I mean, I was even reading that they pushed the launch because they had so many available and there were still so many 1070s and 1080s out there that they didn't want to release it yet. It was ready and they kept manufacturing them. But even this is a late launch because there's so many 1070s and 1080s out there in the wild that they want to try to sell.
I don't know.
I read 2 million units was what they manufactured.
And I'm
for
sure they
2080.
do. I don't think that they pushed the launch just because of that. Because
it's all their partners, so like their partners don't have all this stock just rolling around, on the shelves. And it's important to, help everybody out.
yeah. So we'll definitely see as the months progress, and we'll have a check-in and see if our predictions were correct.
Yeah,
Should be interesting.
We'll see what it's worth.
So, I think that will do it for today on Nerds Podcast.
.tech.
So this is awkward, but we are actually back. Finally.
We're
at least
back.
for now. We're testing the waters, as it were.
For a bit.
I have this excuse every time, but shit got crazy. Excuse me. So, join us next time as we dig deep into Nerds Podcast.
.tech.